Chapter 28. Ledger. Diem's arms are tight around my neck as I give her a piggyback ride across the parking lot toward Grace's car. The t-ball game just ended, and Diem is making me carry her because she said her legs were soaking sore. "I want to go to work with you," she says. "You can't. Kids aren't allowed in bars." "I go to your bar with you sometimes." "Yeah, when we're closed," I clarify. "That doesn't count. We'll be open tonight, and it's busy and I won't be able to keep an eye on you. Not to mention, her mother who she doesn't even know exists will be there. You can come work for me when you turn 18. That's a long time away, you'll be dead." "Hey, now," Grace says defensively. "I'm a lot older than Ledger, and I don't plan on being dead when you're 18. I get Diem secured into her car seat. "How old will I be when everybody dies?" she asks. "Nobody knows when anyone will die," I tell her. "But if we all live until we're old, we'll all be old together." "How old will I be when you're 200? "Dead old," I say. Her eyes grow wide, and I immediately shake my head. "We'll all be dead. No one lives to be 200. My teacher is 200. Mrs. Bradshaw is younger than me," Grace pipes up from the front seat. "Stop telling lies." Diem leans forward and whispers, "Mrs. Bradshaw really is 200. I believe you." I kiss her on top of the head. "Good job today. Love you." "I love you, too. I want to go to work with." I close Diem's door before she finishes her sentence. I don't normally rush them off this way, but as we were walking through the parking lot, I received a text from Kenna. All it said was, "Please come get me. It's not quite 4 yet." She said she didn't need a ride when I asked her yesterday, so my concern was immediately heightened when I got the text. I'm already to my truck when Grace and Diem drive away. Patrick couldn't make the game today because he's working on the jungle gym. I was planning on going home for a couple of hours to see the progress and help before I went to the bar, but now I'm on my way to the grocery store to check on Kenna. I'll text Patrick when I get there to let him know I'm not stopping by. We're almost finished with the jungle gym. Diem's birthday is coming up, which means today was supposed to be the big day. Leah's and my wedding. We plan on going to Hawaii just a week after the wedding, and I remember being stressed that we wouldn't be back for Diem's birthday party. That was another point of contention between Leah and me. She didn't like that Diem's 5th birthday was almost as big a deal to me as our honeymoon. I'm sure Patrick and Grace would have been willing to move the birthday party, but Leah acted like Diem's 5th birthday was a major conflict with our honeymoon before she even inquired about them moving the party, and that ended up becoming one of the first of many red flags. I gave Leah the trip to Hawaii after our breakup. I had already paid for it, but I'm not sure if she's still going. Hopefully she is, but it's been 3 months since we've even spoken. I feel like I have no clue what's going on in her life now. Not that I want to know. It's strange, being involved in every facet of another human being, and then suddenly not knowing anything. It's also strange thinking you know someone but then later realizing maybe you didn't know them at all. I feel that with Leah, and I'm starting to feel that about Kenna, but in the opposite way. With Kenna, I feel like I judged her too poorly in the beginning. With Leah, I feel like I judged her too favorably. I probably should have texted Kenna to let her know I was on my way, because I spot her walking alone on the side of the road about a quarter of a mile away from the store. Her head is down, and she's got both hands gripping the strap of her tote bag on her shoulder. I pull over on the opposite side of the road, but she doesn't even notice my truck, so I tap on the horn. It gets her attention. She looks both ways and then crosses the road and climbs into my truck. A heavy sigh emanates from her when she closes her door. She smells like apples, just like she smelled last night in the doorway of her apartment. I could fucking punch myself for last night. She drops her bag between us and pulls an envelope out of it. She shoves it at me. I got it. The restraining order. I was served as I was walking out of the store to put groceries into someone's car. It was mortifying, Ledger. I read over the forms, and I'm confused about how a judge even granted it, but when I see Grady's name, it all makes sense. He probably vouched for Patrick and Grace and might have even embellished the truth a little bit. He's that type. I bet his wife is loving this. I'm surprised she didn't bring it up at the ball field today. I fold it back up and stick it in her purse. It doesn't mean anything, I say, attempting to comfort her with my lie. It means everything. It's a message. They want me to know they aren't changing their minds. She pulls on her seatbelt. Her eyes and cheeks are red, but she isn't crying. It looks like she's probably cried it out already, and I got to her in the aftermath. I pulled back onto the road feeling heavy. What I said last night about feeling useless, it's the most accurate term for what I am right now. I can't help Kenna, other than how I'm already helping her. Patrick and Grace aren't changing their minds, and any time I try to approach the subject with them, they're immediately defensive. It's difficult, because I agree with why they don't want Kenna around, but I also vehemently disagree. They would cut me out of Diem's life before they would agree to add Kenna into it. That's what scares me the most. If I push the subject too much, or if they find out I'm even remotely on Kenna's side, I'm afraid they'll start viewing me as a threat, the same way they view Kenna. The worst part is, I don't blame them for how they feel about Kenna. The impact of her choices has been detrimental to their lives. But the impact of their choices is becoming detrimental to her life. Fuck. There's no good answer. I've somehow immersed myself in the depths of an impossible situation. One that doesn't leave a single solution that won't lead to at least one person suffering. Do you want to take the night off work? I completely understand if she doesn't feel up to it, but she shakes her head. I need the hours. I'll be fine. It was just embarrassing, even though I knew it was coming. Yeah, but I figured Grady would have the decency to serve you at home. It's not like your home address isn't at the top of the order. I turn right at the next light to get to the bar, but something tells me Kenna might need an hour or so before she moves from one shift to the next. You want a snow cone? I'm not sure if that's a stupid resolution to an issue this serious, but snow cones are always the answer for me and Diem. Kenna nods, and I think I might even see a hint of a smile. Yeah. A snow cone sounds perfect.
Chapter 29. Kenna. I'm leaning my head against the passenger window of his truck, watching him stride up to the snow cone stand with his tattoos and his sex appeal to order 2 rainbow snow cones. Why does he have to do nice things that make him so attractive? I came here once with Scotty, but Scotty didn't look out of place ordering snow cones. We sat at a picnic table that used to be to the left of the snow cone stand, but it's a parking lot now, and the picnic table is nowhere to be seen. All the seating areas have been replaced by plastic tables with pink umbrellas. I only texted Ledger and asked for a ride because of Amy. She found me in the bathroom about to have a panic attack and asked what was wrong. I couldn't bear to tell her someone had filed a restraining order against me. Instead, I just told her the truth. That I sometimes have panic attacks, but that it would pass, and I was sorry, and then I pathetically begged her not to fire me. She looked so sad for me, but she also laughed. Why would I fire you? You're the only worker I have who actually wants to work double shifts. So you had a panic attack, big deal. She talked me into finding a ride home because she didn't trust me to have to walk all that way. I didn't want to tell her Ledger is the only person I know in town, so I texted him, more to reassure her that I wouldn't be alone. It felt good to be worried about by someone. There's a lot I know I need to be grateful for, and Amy is one of those things. It's just really hard to be grateful when there's only one thing I want in my life, and I feel like I'm just getting further and further from that. Ledger returns to the truck with our snow cones. There are sprinkles on mine, and I know that's a small thing, but I make note of it. Maybe if I acknowledge all the good things, no matter how small, they'll add up to make the bad thing in my life less painful. Do you ever bring DM here? I ask him. He uses his spoon to point down the street. The dance studio is about a block that way, he says. I drop her off and Grace picks her up. She's hard to say no to, so I'm a regular here. He sticks his spoon in his mouth and then opens his wallet and pulls out a business card. There are tiny little snow cones hole punched around it. Close to getting a free one, he says, tucking it back in his wallet. It makes me laugh. Impressive. I wish I would have gone up to order with him just so I could see him hand in his snow cone punch card. Banana and lemonade. He looks over at me after taking a bite. That's her favorite combination. I smile. Is yellow her favorite color? He nods. I stick my spoon into the yellow part of my snow cone and dig out a bite. These little tidbits he gives me are something else I'm appreciative of. They're tiny parts of the whole, and maybe if he gives me enough of them, it won't hurt as bad when I have to leave. I try to think about something to talk about that isn't DM. What does the house you're building look like? Ledger picks up his phone and checks the time, and then puts his truck in reverse. I'll take you to see it. Razy and Roman can cover us for a while. I take another bite and don't say anything, but I don't think he realizes what his willingness to show me his new house means to me. The Landrys might have filed a restraining order against me, but at least Ledger trusts me. I have that to cling to, and I cling to it hard. Once we're at least 15 miles outside of town, we turn into an area with a big wooden entryway that says Cheshire Ridge, and then we begin to make our way up a winding road. The trees cover the road like they're hugging it. The sides of the road are dotted with mailboxes every quarter to half a mile. None of the houses can be seen from the road. The mailboxes are the only clues that people even live out here, because the trees are so dense. It's peaceful and secluded. I can see why he chose this area. We come to a piece of property that's so thick with trees you can't even see most of the driveway from the road. There's a stake in the ground where I assume the mailbox will eventually go. There are columns that look like they'll end up being a privacy gate someday. Do you have close neighbors out here? He shakes his head. Not for a half mile, at least. The property is on a 10-acre tract. We pull onto the property, and eventually, a house begins to take shape through the trees. It isn't what I expected. This house isn't your average large manor-style home with a peaked roof. It's spread out and flat and unique, built of some kind of material I don't recognize. I didn't peg Ledger to want something so modern and unusual. I don't know why I pictured a log cabin or something more traditional. Maybe because he mentioned he and Roman were building it, and I just expected it to be a little less complicated. We get out of the truck, and I try to imagine DM out here, running around this yard, playing on the patio, roasting marshmallows in the fire pit out on the back deck. Ledger shows me around, but I can't grasp this type of lifestyle, not even for my daughter. The countertops in the outdoor kitchen, that overlook the backyard, are probably worth more than everything I've ever owned in my entire life added up. There are 3 bedrooms, but the main bedroom is the highlight for me, with a ridiculous closet almost as big as the bedroom itself. I admire the house and listen to him talk excitedly about everything he and Roman have done by hand, and while it is impressive, it's also depressing. This is a house my daughter will spend time in, which means it's likely a house I'll never return to again. As much as I enjoy watching him show off his space, I also don't want to see it now that I'm here. And to be honest, it kind of makes me sad to know that he won't be living across from DM. I'm starting to really like him as a person, and knowing he's a constant in her life is comforting. But he won't be across the street from her when he moves out here, and it makes me wonder if that's going to make her sad. The back door to the huge patio overlooking rolling hills opens up like an accordion. He pushes it to one side, and I walk out onto the back deck. The sun is about to set, and it's probably one of the best views of the sunset in this entire town. It lights up the tops of the trees below us and makes them look like they're on fire. There isn't any patio furniture yet, so I sit down on the steps and Ledger takes a seat next to me. I haven't said much, but he doesn't need the compliments. He knows how beautiful this place is. I can't imagine what it's costing him to build. Are you rich? It just comes out. I rub my face after I ask it and say, sorry. That was rude. He laughs and rests his elbows on his knees. It's okay. The house is cheaper than it looks. Roman and I have done most of the work by hand over the last couple of years, but I made good investments with the money I got from my football contract. It's mostly gone now, but I got a business out of it, and now a home. Can't complain. I'm happy for him. At least life works out for some people. We all have our failures, though, I suppose. I'm curious what Ledger's failures are. Wait, I say, remembering at least one thing that didn't quite work out for him. Weren't you supposed to get married this weekend? Ledger nods. 2 hours ago, actually. Are you sad about it? Of course, he says. I don't regret the decision, but I am sad it didn't work out. I love her. He said love, as in present tense. I wait for him to correct himself, but he doesn't, and then I realize that wasn't a mistake. He loves her still. I guess realizing your life isn't compatible with someone else's doesn't erase the feelings that are there. There's a tiny flame of jealousy suddenly flickering in my chest. How did you propose to her? Do we really have to talk about this? He's laughing, like the subject is more awkward than sad. Yes. I'm nosy. He exhales and then says, I asked her dad for permission first. And then I bought her the ring she'd been not so subtle about wanting. I took her to dinner on our 2nd anniversary and had this big proposal planned in the park down the street from the restaurant. Her friends and family were there waiting, and then I got down on one knee and proposed. It was your typical Instagram-worthy engagement. Did you cry? No. I was too nervous. Did she? He cocks his head like he's trying to think back. I don't think so. Maybe a tear or two. It was dark, which I didn't take into consideration, so the footage of the proposal came out kind of shitty. She complained about that the next day. That she wouldn't have good video and I should have proposed before the sun set. She sounds fun. Ledger smiles. Honestly, you'd probably like her. I keep saying things that make her sound bad, but we had a lot of fun together. When we were together, I didn't think about Scotty as much. Things felt light with her because of that. I look away when he says that. Do I only remind you of him? Ledger says nothing in response to my question. He doesn't want to hurt my feelings, so he just chooses not to answer, but his silence makes me feel like I want to flee. I start to stand up because I'm ready to leave, but as soon as I begin to stand, he grabs my wrist and gently pulls me back down. Sit. Let's stay until the sun sets. I sit back down, and it takes about 10 minutes for the sun to sink down into the trees. Neither of us talks. We just watch the rays disappear, and the tips of the trees return to their natural, fireless colors. It's dusk now, and without electricity, the house behind us is quickly growing dark. Ledger has a contemplative look about him when he says, I feel guilty. Welcome to my constant state. Why? For building this house. I feel like Scotty would be disappointed in me. DM gets so sad every time we bring up the fact that I'm putting my other house up for sale. Why did you build this house, then? It's been my dream for a long time now. I bought the land and started drafting the design back when DM was just a baby. Before I knew how much I would love her. He cuts his eyes to mine. Don't get me wrong, I loved her then, but it was different. She started to walk and talk, and develop her unique personality, and we became inseparable. And over time, this place started to feel less like my future home and more like, he tries to come up with the word, but he can't. A prison? Ledger looks at me like I'm the first person to understand him. Yes. Exactly. I feel like I'm locked into it now, but the idea of not seeing DM every day is really starting to weigh on me. It'll change our relationship. With my schedule, I'll probably see her once a week if I'm lucky. I think that's why I've been taking my time building it. I don't know that I'm really looking forward to moving out here. Then sell it. He laughs, like that's an absurd idea. I'm serious. I'd much rather you live across the street from my daughter than clear across town. I know I can't be in her life like I wish I could, but there's some comfort in knowing you are. Ledger stares at me for a long beat after I say that. Then he stands up and reaches out for my hand. We should get to work.
Yeah.
Don't want to piss off the boss. I grab his hand and stand up, and when I do, I'm suddenly way too close to him. He doesn't back away or let go of my hand, and now he's looking at me from just a few inches away with an intensity I feel slide down my spine. Ledger threads his fingers through mine, and when our palms touch, the feeling that surges through me makes me wince. Ledger feels it, too. I can see it in the way his eyes fill with torment. Funny how something that should feel so good can feel so painful when the circumstances aren't right. And our circumstances are definitely not right. But I squeeze his hand anyway, letting him know I'm feeling exactly what he's feeling, and I'm just as torn as he is. Ledger drops his forehead to mine, and we both close our eyes and just silently breathe through whatever this moment is. I can feel everything he's not saying. I can even somehow feel the kiss he's not even giving me. But if we slip back into the moment we shared last night, it would rip that wound open even wider, until that's all I am. He knows just as much as I do that this isn't a good idea. What are you gonna do, Ledger? Hide me in your closet until she's 18? He looks down at our hands still linked together and shrugs. It's a huge closet. There's only a beat of silence before it's sliced in two by my laughter. He grins and then leads the way through his dark house and back to his truck.
Chapter 30. Ledger. I'm in my office processing payroll, processing my thoughts, processing all the mistakes I've made in the last few weeks. Roman was right when he said I could have paid her off if I really wanted her to leave. Maybe I should have, because the more I'm around her, the more false hope I'm giving her. The Landrys won't come around to the idea of accepting her anytime soon. And if she stays here and continues to work, it's putting us both at risk of getting caught. I don't know what I was thinking hiring her in the first place. I thought she could hide out in the back, but Kenna isn't the kind of girl you can hide. She stands out. Someone will notice her. Someone will recognize her. And then we'll both feel the consequences of this lie. I take out my phone and text Kenna. Come to my office when you have a second. I stand up and pace for the entire 30 seconds it takes her to make her way back to my office. I close the door behind her and then walk over to my desk and sit on the edge of it. She stands near the door, and her arms are folded. She looks nervous. I don't mean to make her nervous. I point to the chair in front of me, and she walks hesitantly toward it and then sits. I feel like I'm in trouble, she says. You aren't in trouble. I've been thinking about what you overheard Roman say. And I feel like I should let you know that you don't have to come to work anymore. She looks surprised. Am I being fired? No. Of course not. I inhale a breath in preparation for the honesty I'm about to spill. We both know I hired you for selfish reasons, Kenna. If you ever get to the point where you want to leave town and you need money, all you have to do is ask. You don't have to work for it. She's looking at me like I've just punched her in the gut. She stands up and starts pacing while she processes this conversation. Do you want me to leave town? Fuck. I brought her in here to try to make her life easier, but I'm saying everything wrong. I shake my head. No, I reach out and encircle her wrist with my fingers to stop her from pacing. Then why are you telling me this? I could give her several reasons. Because you need to know you have options. Because if you stay here, someone will eventually recognize you. Because if we keep working together, we'll shatter whatever is left of our flimsy boundary. I don't say any of those things, though. I just look at her pointedly while I run my thumb across her wrist. You know why. Her chest rises and falls with her sigh. But then she jerks her hand from mine at the sudden knock on my office door. I immediately stand up straight, and Kenna folds her arms over her chest. Our reactions make us look really guilty right now. Marian is standing in the doorway looking back and forth between us. She grins and says, "What did I just interrupt? An employee evaluation?" I walk around my desk and pretend to be occupied by my computer screen. "What do you need, Marian?" "Well..." This suddenly feels like the wrong moment to mention this, but Leah's here. The woman you were supposed to marry today? She's out front asking for you. It takes everything in me not to look at Kenna to see how she reacted to that. Somehow I managed to stay focused on Marian. Tell her I'll be right out. Marian backs away from the door, but she leaves it open. Kenna immediately follows her out without looking back at me. I'm confused, because why would Leah be here? What could she possibly want? Is she having more of a reaction to what today was supposed to be than I am? Because I've hardly thought about it. I think that proves it was the right decision. For me, at least. I walk out of my office, but I have to pass by Kenna on my way to the front. We make 2 seconds of eye contact before she looks away. I exit the kitchen and look around the room, but I don't immediately spot Leah. It's a lot more crowded now than when I went to my office to do payroll, so I glance around for a moment before making my way behind the bar. Marian is at the other end of the room, so I can't ask her where Leah went. Roman sees me and points at a group of guys. I haven't taken their order yet. Where's Leah? Roman looks confused. Leah? What? Marian is walking toward me. She grins and leans over the bar when she reaches me. Roman was getting swamped, so he asked me to grab you. I was kidding about Leah. I was just trying to build some angst for you because girls love angst. You're welcome. She picks up a tray full of drinks and glides over to a table to deliver them. I shake my head in confusion. I'm irritated she lied, because now Kenna's mind is probably going in 1,000 different directions. But I'm also relieved she lied. I didn't want to see Leah. I stay and take a few orders and close out 3 tabs, but as soon as Roman is caught up, I head to the back. Kenna isn't in the kitchen. I look around for her, but Erin motions toward the back door to let me know she's on break. When I push open the door to the alley, I find Kenna leaning against the building with her arms folded over her chest. She looks up at me as soon as I walk outside, and I can see the immediate relief wash over her. She was jealous. She tries to hide it by forcing a smile, but I saw the look on her face before she shoved it away. I walk over to her and mimic her position against the wall. Marian was lying. Leah wasn't here, she made that up. She narrows her eyes in confusion. Why would she? Kenna stops talking, and a small smile spreads across her lips. Wow. Marian is messy. She doesn't seem angry that Marian lied. She appears impressed. Her smile makes me smile, and then I say, "You were jealous." Kenna rolls her eyes. I was not. You were. She pushes off the wall and heads for the stairs, but she pauses right in front of me. She faces me, and I can't tell what her expression means. I don't know what she's about to do, but if she tried to kiss me, it would make my fucking night. I'm tired of the back and forth with her. I'm tired of hiding her. I'd give anything to be able to get to know her better without worrying about consequences, to be able to ask her questions that have nothing to do with Scotty or the Landrys. I want to openly kiss her, I want to take her home with me, I want to know what it's like to fall asleep next to her and wake up next to her. I fucking like her, and the more I'm around her, the more I don't want to be apart from her. I'm putting in my 2-week notice, she says. Shit. I chew on my lip until I'm positive I won't drop to my knees and beg her to stay. Why? She hesitates and then says, you know why. She disappears back inside the building, and I sit in my fucking feelings. I stare at my truck with an intense urge to drive straight to Patrick and Grace's house and tell them all about Kenna. I want to tell them how selfless she is. I want to tell them what a hard worker she is. I want to tell them how forgiving she is, because every single one of us has been making her life a living hell, yet she somehow doesn't seem to resent us for it. I want to tell Patrick and Grace every wonderful thing about Kenna, but even more than that, I want to tell Kenna how wrong I was when I told her DM wouldn't benefit from having her in her life. Who am I to say that to a mother about her own child? Who the fuck am I to make that kind of judgment?
Chapter 31. Kenna. It starts raining on our drive home. The rain hitting the windshield is the only sound right now, because neither of us is speaking. We haven't said a word to each other since we were in the alley earlier tonight. I wonder if he's mad that I put in my notice. I don't know why he would be, he's the one who brought it up. But he's so quiet it's making things uncomfortable. I can't continue to work for him, though. How do we plan for my potential departure when we're starting to crave each other's company? I thought this was messy before, but it's bound to get even messier if I let it continue. There's an unresolved energy moving between us in the truck when he pulls into the parking lot. Sometimes when he drops me off, he doesn't even turn off the engine of his truck. But tonight he does, and he removes the keys, and his seatbelt, and he grabs an umbrella and gets out of the truck. It only takes him a few seconds to make it to the passenger side, but in that few seconds, I've decided I don't want him to walk me up. I can walk myself up. It's better that way. I don't trust myself with him. He opens my door and I reach for the umbrella, but he pulls it back. What are you doing? He asks. Give me the umbrella. I can walk myself up. He takes a step back so I can get out of his truck. No. I'm walking you up. I don't know if you should. I definitely shouldn't, he says. But he keeps walking. Keeps holding the umbrella over my head. My breaths start to catch in my chest before we even reach the top of the stairs. I fish my keys out of my purse, unsure if he's expecting to come inside or if he just plans to tell me good night. Either choice makes me nervous. Either one is too much. Either one will do. He closes the umbrella when we reach my door and waits for me to unlock it. Before I open it, I turn to face him as if he's going to let me say goodnight without inviting him inside. He points at my door but says nothing. I quietly inhale and then push open the door to my apartment. He follows me inside and closes the door behind him. He's acting so assured right now. The complete opposite of what I'm feeling. I scoop Ivy up and take her to the bathroom so she can't get out in case Ledger opens the door to leave. When I close the bathroom door and turn around, Ledger is standing at the counter, running a finger across the stack of letters I printed out. I don't want him to read them, so I walk over and flip them over and shove them aside. Are those the letters? He asks. Most of them. But I have digital copies too. I typed them all up a couple of months ago and put them into Google Drive. I was afraid to lose them. Will you read one of them to me? I shake my head. Those letters are personal to me. This is the second time he's asked if I'd read one, and the answer is still no. You asking me to read you one of those letters would be like me asking you to play a tape of one of your therapy sessions. I don't go to therapy, Ledger says. Maybe you should. He chews his lip with a contemplative nod. Maybe I will. I walk around him and open the refrigerator. I've slowly been stocking it, so I actually have more than Lunchables this time. You want something to drink? I have water, tea, milk. I grab an almost empty container of juice. A swig of apple juice. I'm not thirsty. I'm not either, but I drink the rest of the apple juice straight from the container as a preventive measure, because I feel like I'm about to be parched with him standing in my apartment like this. Just his presence here is enough to make my throat run dry. It's different when we're at work. There are other people around to keep my mind from moving in the direction it's moving right now. But when it's just the two of us alone in my apartment, all I can think about is our proximity to one another and how many heartbeats will pass in the time it takes him to close the gap and kiss me. I set the empty container of apple juice on the bar and wipe my mouth. Is that why you always taste like apples? I look right at him when he says that. It's an intimate thing to say. Admitting out loud that you know what someone else tastes like. I feel like a dazzled, inexperienced teenager under his gaze, so I look down at my feet because not looking at him is less draining. What do you want, Ledger? He calmly leans against the counter. We're just a couple of feet apart when he says, I want to get to know you better. I wasn't expecting him to say that, so of course I look over at him and then immediately regret it because he's standing so close to me. What do you want to know? More about you. Your likes, your dislikes, your goals. What do you want to do with your life? I can't help but laugh. I expected him to ask about Scotty, or something related to DM, or my current situation. But he's just making casual conversation, and I have no idea what to do with it. I've always wanted to be a locksmith. That makes Ledger laugh. A locksmith? I nod. Why a locksmith? Because no one can be mad at a locksmith. They show up to help when people are in a crisis. I think it would be a rewarding job to make people's shitty days a little bit better. Ledger nods appreciatively. I can't say I've ever met anyone who wanted to be a locksmith. Well. Now you have. Next question. Why did you choose the name DM? I turn his question around on him before answering it. Why did the Landrys choose not to change the name I gave her? He works his jaw back and forth. They were worried that maybe you and Scotty had discussed what to name her, and DM was a name Scotty chose. Scotty never even knew I was pregnant. Did you know you were pregnant? He asks. Before Scotty died? I shake my head. My voice is a whisper when I say, no. I never would have pleaded guilty if I knew I was pregnant with DM. He concentrates on that reply. Why did you plead guilty? I hug myself. My eyes start to sting, so I take a moment to breathe through the memory before answering him. I wasn't in a good headspace, I admit. I don't elaborate, though. I can't. Ledger doesn't come back with another question right away. He lets silence fill the room, and then he empties it by saying, where would we be right now if I didn't know Scotty? What do you mean? His eyes fall briefly to my mouth. It's a flicker of a gaze, but I see it. I feel it. The night we met at the bar. You said you didn't know who I was. What if I was just some random guy who didn't know DM or Scotty or you? What do you think would have happened between us that night? A lot more than what did happen, I admit. He rolls his throat as if he swallowed that answer. He stares at me and I stare back, waiting anxiously for his next question or thought or move. I sometimes wonder if we'd even be talking right now if I didn't know DM. Why does it matter? I ask. Because it would be the difference between you wanting to be with me for me, or wanting to be with me so you could use me for my connections. My jaw tenses. I have to break our gaze and look at something besides him, because that comment makes me angry. If I wanted to use you for your connections, I'd have fucked you by now. I push off the counter. You should go. I start to walk toward the door, but Ledger grabs my wrist and pulls me back. I spin around, but before I can yell at him, I see the look in his eye. It's apologetic. Sad. He pulls me to his chest and wraps his arms around me in a comforting embrace. I'm stiff against him, unsure of what to do with my lingering anger. He slides his hands to my arms and lifts them, wrapping them around his waist. I wasn't insulting you, he says, his breath grazing my cheek. I was just working through some thoughts out loud. He presses the side of his head to mine, and I squeeze my eyes shut because he feels so good. I forgot what it felt like for someone else to need me. Want me. Like me. Ledger keeps us wrapped tightly together when he says, in a matter of a few weeks, I went from hating you to liking you to wanting the world for you, so forgive me if those feelings sometimes overlap. I relate to that more than he knows. I sometimes want to scream at him for having been a wall between me and my daughter, but at the same time, I want to kiss him for loving her enough to be a wall of protection for her. His finger meets my chin, and he tilts my focus up to his. I wish I could take back what I said to you when I told you DM wouldn't benefit from you being in her life. He slides his hands into my hair and looks at me with sincerity. She would be lucky to have a woman like you in her life. You're selfless and you're kind and you're strong. You're everything I want DM to be someday. He wipes away a tear that falls down my cheek. And I don't know how I can change their minds, but I'm going to try. I want to fight for you because I know that's what Scotty would want me to do. I have no idea what to do with all the feelings his words just brought out. Ledger doesn't kiss me, but that's only because I kiss him first. I press my mouth to his because nothing I could say would convey how much I appreciate the validation he just gave to me. It's one thing for him to admit he wants me to meet her, but he took it a million steps further by saying he wants her to be like me. It's the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me. His tongue slides against mine, and the heat from his mouth seems to pulse into me. I pull him closer until our chests meet, but it's still not close enough. I had no idea that was the only thing holding me back from Ledger. I just needed to know he believed in me. Now that I know he does, I can't find a single part of me that doesn't want every part of him. Ledger lifts me and walks me across the room to the couch without breaking our kiss. The weight of his body feels so good pressed against mine. I start to pull off his shirt because I want to be against his skin, but he pushes my hand away. Wait, he says, pulling back. Wait. I drop my head to the couch and groan. I can't take much more of this back and forth. I'm finally in a headspace to let him do whatever he wants to me, and now he's the one pulling away. He kisses my chin. I might be getting ahead of myself, but if we're about to have sex, I need to go down to my truck and grab a condom before you undress me. Unless you have a condom up here. I'm so relieved that's why he stopped. I push him away. Hurry. Go get one. He's off the couch and out the door in seconds. I use the spare minute to check my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Ivy is asleep in her little bed that I've set next to the tub. I take a small dab of toothpaste and brush it across my teeth and tongue. I wish I could write a quick letter to Scotty. I feel like I need to warn him of what's about to happen, which is stupid because he's dead and it's been 5 years and I can have sex with whoever I want, but he was the last person I've ever had sex with, so this feels like a really big moment. Not to mention, it's with his best friend. I am so sorry, Scotty, I whisper. But not sorry enough to stop it. I hear my front door open, so I leave the bathroom and find Ledger locking the door. When he turns to face me, I laugh because he's soaking wet from the rain. His hair is dripping water into his eyes, so he pushes it back. I probably should have used the umbrella, but I didn't want to waste any time. I walk over to him and help him out of his shirt. He returns the favor and helps me out of mine. I'm wearing my good bra. I wear it every time I work a shift at his bar because I've wanted to be prepared in case this happened. I've been trying to convince myself it wouldn't, but deep down, I've been hoping it would. Ledger leans forward and kisses me on the mouth with his rain-soaked lips. He's cold because he's wet, but his tongue is a scorching contrast to his frigid lips. My stomach swirls with heat when he wraps his other hand in my hair and tilts my face back so he can kiss me even deeper. I lower my hands to his jeans and unbutton them, anxious to get him out of them. determined to feel him against me. Fearful that I won't remember how to do this. It's been so long since I've had sex, I feel like I should warn him. He starts to walk me backward toward the inflatable mattress. He lowers me onto it and starts to remove the rest of my clothes. As he's working my jeans down my legs, I say, I haven't been with anyone since Scotty. His eyes meet mine after he pulls off my jeans, and there's a calming reassurance in his expression. He lowers himself on top of me and presses a soft kiss to my mouth. It's okay to change your mind. I shake my head. I'm not. I just wanted you to know it's been a while. In case I'm not very. He cuts me off with another kiss, then he says, you've already exceeded my expectations, Kenna. He moves his mouth to my neck, and I feel his tongue drag up my throat. My eyes fall shut. He removes my panties and my bra and his jeans while his tongue explores every inch of me between my neck and my stomach. When he crawls back up me to kiss me on the mouth, I feel him hard between my legs, and it fills me with anticipation. I give him a deep, long, meaningful kiss while he reaches between us and puts on the condom. He positions himself against me, but he doesn't enter me. Instead, he slides his finger up the center of me, and it's so unexpected I arch my back and moan. My moan is drowned out by the thunder outside. It's raining even harder now, but I like that the thunderstorm is our background noise. It somehow makes this even more sensual. Ledger continues to work his finger over me, and then inside of me, and the sensation is so intense I can't even kiss him back. My lips are parted and I'm moaning in between gasps of air. Ledger keeps his lips rested against mine when he begins to push into me. He isn't able to push into me with ease. It's a slow, almost painful experience. I move my mouth to his shoulder as he makes gentle progress. When he's all the way inside me, I drop my head back to the pillow because the pain transforms into pleasure. He slowly pulls out and then pushes back into me with a little more force. He exhales sharply, and his breath falls over my shoulder, tickling my skin. I lift my hips, opening myself up to him even more, and he shoves into me again. Kenna. I can barely open my eyes and look at him. His lips graze mine and he whispers, this is too good. Fuck. Fuck, I have to stop. He pulls out of me, and when he does, I whimper. It's an immediate emptiness I wasn't prepared for. Ledger remains on top of me and slides 2 fingers inside of me, so I don't even have time to complain before I'm moaning again. He kisses the spot just below my ear. I'm sorry, but I won't last long when I'm back inside you. I don't even care. I just want him to keep doing what he's doing with his hand. I wrap my arm around his neck and pull him down. I want all his weight pressed against me. He slides his thumb up the center of me, and it sends such an intense jolt through me, I end up biting his shoulder. He groans when my teeth clamp onto his skin, and his groan brings me right over the edge. Our mouths meet in a frantic kiss, and he swallows my moans while he finishes me off. I'm still trembling beneath his touch when he thrusts into me again. The waves of my orgasm are still rolling through me when he lifts up onto his knees and grips my waist, pulling me to meet each thrust. God, he's beautiful. The muscles in his arms flex with each roll of his hips. He pulls one of my legs up to his shoulder. We make eye contact for a few seconds, and then he turns his head and runs his tongue up my leg. I wasn't expecting that. I want him to do it again, but he shoves my leg aside and lowers himself on top of me again. We're at a different angle now, and he's somehow able to stab into me even deeper. It's only seconds before he starts to come. He tenses up and drops his weight on me. Fuck. He groans and then says, fuck, a second time. Then he's kissing me. Intense kisses at first, but after he pulls out, the kisses grow sweeter. Softer. Slower. I already want it to happen again, but I need to catch my breath first. Maybe rehydrate. We kiss for a couple of minutes, and it's so hard to stop because this is the first time we've been able to enjoy each other without things coming to an abrupt end. It doesn't help that the rain against the windows is creating the perfect backdrop to this moment. I don't want it to end. I don't think Ledger does either, because every time I think he's finished kissing me, he comes back for more. He does stop eventually, but only long enough to go to the bathroom and dispose of the condom. When he comes back to the bed, he adjusts himself until he's spooning me, and then he kisses my shoulder. He threads his fingers through mine and tucks our hands against my stomach. I wouldn't mind if we put that on the schedule again for tonight. I laugh at the way he phrased that. I don't know why I find it funny. Yes. Let's tell Siri to put it on the calendar for an hour from now, I tease. Hey, Siri, he yells. Both of our phones go off at the same time. Schedule sex with Kenna for 1 hour from now. I laugh and elbow him, then roll onto my back. He lifts up and smiles down at me. I'll last a lot longer the second time. I promise. I probably won't, I admit. Ledger kisses me, and then he buries his head in my hair, tugging me closer to his side. I stare up at the ceiling for a long time. Maybe half an hour. Maybe even longer. Ledger's breathing has evened out, and I'm almost positive he's asleep. The rain hasn't let up at all, but my mind is too active for it to make me sleepy. I hear Ivy meow from the bathroom, so I slip off the mattress and let her out. She hops onto the couch and curls up into a ball. I walk to the counter and slide my notebook in front of me. I grab a pen and begin writing a letter to Scotty. It doesn't take me long. It's a short letter, but when I finish and close the notebook, I catch Ledger staring at me. He's on his stomach with his chin resting on his arms. What did you write? He asks. This is the third time he's asked me to read him something. This is the first time I feel like conceding. I open the notebook to the letter I just wrote. I run my finger over Scotty's name. You might not like it. Is it the truth? I nod. Ledger points to the empty spot next to him on the bed. Then I want to hear it. Come here. I raise an eyebrow in warning because not everyone can handle the truth as well as they think they can. But he remains steadfast, so I join him on the bed. He rolls onto his back, and I'm sitting cross-legged next to him when I begin to read. Dear Scotty. I had sex with your best friend tonight. I'm not sure that's something you want to hear. Or maybe it is. I get the feeling if you can hear these letters from wherever you are, you would want me to be happy. And right now, Ledger is the one thing in my life that makes me happy. If it's any consolation, the sex with him was great, but no one can hold a candle to you. Love. Kenna. I close the notebook and rest it on my lap. Ledger is quiet for a moment as he stares stoically at the ceiling. You're just saying that so you don't hurt his feelings, right? I laugh. Sure. If that's what you need to hear. He grabs the notebook and tosses it aside, then he wraps an arm around me and pulls me on top of him. It was good, though, right? I press a finger to his lips and drop my mouth to his ear. The best, I whisper. At the exact moment I say that, a loud clap of thunder rolls through the sky outside with perfect timing. It's so loud I can feel it in my stomach. Oh shit, Ledger says with a laugh. Scotty didn't like that. You better take it back. Tell him I suck. I immediately slide off Ledger and lie on my back. I'm sorry, Scotty. You're better than Ledger, I promise. We laugh together, but then we both sigh and listen to the rain for a while. Ledger eventually puts a hand on my hip and rolls me toward him. He nips at my bottom lip before kissing my neck. I feel like I need another opportunity to prove myself. His kisses move lower and lower until he takes one of my nipples into his mouth. The second time is much longer, and somehow even better.
Chapter 32. Ledger. The kitten slept in Kenna's arms all night. Maybe it's weird, but I like watching her with Ivy. She's affectionate with her. She always makes sure Ivy doesn't have an opportunity to run outside when she isn't looking. It makes me curious how she'll be with DM. Because I'm confident I'll get to witness it someday. It might take us a while to get there, but I'll find a way. She deserves it and DM deserves it, and I trust my gut feelings more than my doubts. I move quietly as I reach for my phone to check the time. It's almost 7 in the morning, and DM will wake up soon. She'll notice my truck is gone. I should probably try to get home before they leave for Patrick's mother's house. I don't want to slip out while Kenna is asleep, though. I would feel like an asshole if she woke up alone after last night. I press a gentle kiss to the corner of her mouth, and then I brush her hair out of her face. She begins to move and moan, and I know she's just waking up, but her wake-up sounds are very similar to her sex sounds, and now I don't want to leave. Ever. She finally gets her eyes open and looks up at me. I have to go, I say quietly. Can I come back over later? She nods. I'll be here. I'm off today. She gives me a closed lips kiss. I'll kiss you better later, but I want to brush my teeth first. I laugh and then kiss her cheek. Before I get up, we have this brief moment of eye contact where it feels like she's thinking something she doesn't want to say out loud. I stare down at her for a minute, waiting for her to speak, but when she doesn't, I kiss her on the mouth one more time. I'll be back this afternoon. I waited too long. DM and Grace are already awake and in their front yard when I pull onto our street. DM sees me before Grace does, so she's already running across the street when I pull into my driveway and kill my truck. I swing open the door and immediately scoop her up. I kiss the side of DM's head right when she wraps herself around me and squeezes my neck. I swear to God, there is nothing even remotely close to a hug from this girl. A hug from her mother does run a very close second, though. Grace makes it to my yard a few seconds later. She shoots me a teasing look, as if she knows why I was out all night. She might think she knows, but she wouldn't be looking at me like this if she had any clue who I was with. You look like you didn't get much sleep, she says. I slept plenty. Get your head out of the gutter. Grace laughs and tugs on DM's ponytail. Well, you have perfect timing. She was hoping to say goodbye before we left. DM hugs my neck again. Don't forget about me, she says, loosening her grip so I can set her back down. You'll only be gone one night, D. How could I forget about you? DM scratches her face and says, You're old, and old people forget stuff. I am not old, I say. Hold on before you go, Grace. I unlock my front door and head to my kitchen and grab the flowers I bought for her yesterday morning. I haven't let a Mother's Day or a Father's Day pass without getting something for her or Patrick. She's been like a mother to me my whole life, so I'd honestly probably still buy her flowers even if Scotty were here. Happy Mother's Day. I hand them to her, and she acts surprised and delighted and gives me a hug, but I don't hear her thank you through the loud regret piercing through me right now. I forgot today was Mother's Day. I woke up next to Kenna this morning and said nothing to her about it. I feel like an asshole. I need to put these in water before I go, Grace says. Want to buckle DM into the car for me? I grab DM's hand and walk them across the street. Patrick is already in the car waiting. Grace walks the flowers into the house, and I open the back door to buckle DM into her car seat. What's Mother's Day? She asks me. It's a holiday. I keep my explanation brief, but Patrick and I trade glances. I know. But why are you and Nono giving Nana flowers for Mother's Day? You said Robin is your mother. Robin is my mother, I say. And your Grandma Landry is Nono's mother. That's why you're going to see her today. But on Mother's Day, if you know a mother that you love, you buy her flowers even if she isn't your mother. DM crinkles up her nose. Am I supposed to give my mother flowers? She's really been working through the whole family tree lately, and it's cute, but also concerning. She's eventually going to find out her family tree was once struck by lightning. Patrick finally chimes in. We gave your Nana her flowers last night, remember? DM shakes her head. No. I'm talking about my mother that isn't here. The one with the tiny car. Are we supposed to give her flowers? Patrick and I trade another glance. I'm sure he's mistaking the pain on my face for discomfort at DM's question. I kiss DM on the forehead just as Grace returns to the car. Your mother will get flowers, I say to DM. Love you. Tell your Grandma Landry I said hello. DM smiles and pats my cheek with her tiny hand. Happy Mother's Day, Ledger. I back away from the car and tell them to have a safe trip. But as they're driving away, I feel my heart grow heavier as DM's words sink in. She's starting to wonder about her mother. She's starting to worry. And even though Patrick assumed I was just reassuring her by saying DM's mother would get flowers, I was actually making her a promise. One I won't break. The idea of Kenna going through the entire day today without her motherhood being acknowledged by anyone makes me angry at this whole situation. I sometimes want to place that blame directly on Patrick and Grace, but that's not fair either. They're just doing what they need to do to survive. It is what it is. A fucked up situation, with no evil people to blame. We're all just a bunch of sad people doing what we have to do to make it until tomorrow. Some of us sadder than others. Some of us more willing to forgive than others. Grudges are heavy, but for the people hurting the most, I suppose forgiveness is even heavier. I pull up to Kenna's apartment a few hours later and am halfway to the stairs when I spot her out back. She's cleaning off the table I lent her when she notices me. Her eyes fall to the flowers in my hand, and she stiffens. I walk closer to her, but she's still staring at the flowers. I hand them to her. Happy Mother's Day. I've already put the flowers in a vase because I wasn't sure if she even had one. Based on the look on her face, I'm wondering if maybe I shouldn't have bought her flowers. Maybe celebrating Mother's Day before she's even met her child is uncomfortable. I don't know, but I feel like I should have put more thought into this moment. She takes them from me with hesitation, like she's never been given a gift before. Then she looks at me, and very quietly, she says, "Thank you." She means it. The way her eyes tear up immediately convinces me bringing them was the right move. How was the lunch? She smiles. It was fun. We had fun. She nudges her head up to her apartment. You want to come up? I follow her upstairs, and once we're inside her apartment, she tops off the vase with a little more water and sets it on her counter. She's adjusting the flowers when she says, "What are you doing today?" I want to say, whatever you're doing, but I don't know where her head is at after last night. Sometimes things seem good and perfect in the moment, but when you get hours of reflection afterward, the perfection can morph into something else. I'm heading out to the new house to get some work done on the floors. Patrick and Grace took DM to his mother's, so they'll be gone until tomorrow. Kenna is wearing a pink button-up shirt that looks new, and it's topped over a long, white, flowy skirt. I've never seen her in anything other than a t-shirt and jeans, but this shirt reveals the tiniest hint of her cleavage. I'm trying so hard not to look, but holy fuck, it's a struggle. We both stand in silence for a beat. Then I say, "You want to come with me?" She eyes me cautiously. "Do you want me to?" I realize the hesitation pouring from her may not be because of her own feelings of regret, but rather her fears that I have regrets. Of course I do. The conviction in my response makes her smile, and her smile breaks down whatever was keeping us separated. I pull her to me and kiss her. She immediately seems at ease once my mouth is on hers. I hate that I even made her doubt herself for 1 second. I should have kissed her as soon as I handed her the flowers downstairs. "Can we get snow cones on the way there?" she asks. I nod. "Do you have your punch card?" she teases. I never leave the house without it. She laughs and then grabs her purse and pets Ivy goodbye. When we get downstairs, Kenna and I fold up the table and chairs and begin hauling them to my truck. It works out that I'm here today, because I've been meaning to move one of these tables to the new house. I'm carrying the last armful of chairs to the truck when Lady Diana appears out of nowhere. She stands between me and Kenna and the truck. "Are you leaving with the jerk?" she asks Kenna. "You can stop calling him a jerk now. His name is Ledger." Lady Diana looks me up and down and then mutters, "Ledgerk." Kenna ignores the insult and says, "I'll see you at work tomorrow." I'm laughing when we get in the truck. "Ledgerk. That was actually really clever." Kenna buckles her seatbelt and says, "She's witty and vicious. It's a dangerous combination." I put the truck in reverse, wondering if I should give her the other gift I have for her. Now that we're here in my truck together, it feels slightly more embarrassing than when I got the idea for it, and the fact that I spent so long on it this morning makes it that much more awkward. So we're at least a mile from her apartment before I finally work up the nerve to say, "I made you something." I wait until we're at a stop sign, and then I text her the link. Her phone pings, so she opens the link and stares at her screen for a few seconds. "What is this? A playlist?" "Yeah. I made it this morning. It's over 20 songs that have absolutely nothing to do with anything that could remind you of anything sad." She stares at the screen on her phone as she scrolls through the songs. I'm waiting for some kind of reaction from her, but her face is blank. She looks out the window and covers her mouth like she's stifling a laugh. I keep stealing glances at her, but I eventually can't take it anymore. "Are you laughing? Was that stupid?" When she turns to face me, she's smiling, and there might even be burgeoning tears in her eyes. "It's not stupid at all." She reaches across the seat for my hand, and then she looks back out her window. For at least 2 miles, I'm fighting back a smile. But then somewhere around the 3rd mile, I'm fighting back a frown because something as simple as a playlist shouldn't make her want to cry. Her loneliness is starting to hurt me. I want to see her happy. I want to be able to say all the right things when I tell Patrick and Grace why they should give her a chance, but the fact that I still don't truly know her history with Scotty is one of the many things I'm afraid might prevent the outcome we both want. Every time I'm with her, the questions are always on the tip of my tongue. "What happened? Why did you leave him?" But it's either never the right moment, or the moment is right but the emotions are already too heavy. I wanted to ask her last night when I was asking her all the other questions, but I just couldn't get it out. Sometimes she looks too sad for me to expect her to talk about things that will make her even sadder. I need to know, though. I feel like I can't fully defend her or blindly root for her to be in Diem's life until I know exactly what happened that night and why. "Kenna?" We glance at each other at the same time. I want to know what happened that night. The air develops a weight to it, and it feels harder to breathe in. I think I just made it harder for her to breathe too. She inhales a slow breath and releases my hand. She flexes her fingers and grips her thighs. "You said you wrote about it. Will you read it to me?" Her expression is filled with what looks like fear now, like she's too scared to go back to that night. Or too scared to take me there with her. I don't blame her, and I feel bad asking her to, but I want to know. I need to know. If I'm going to drop to my knees in front of Patrick and Grace when I beg them to give her a chance, I need to fully know the person I'm fighting for. Even though at this point she couldn't say anything that would change my mind about her. I know she's a good person. A good person who had one bad night. It happens to the best of us. The worst of us. All of us. Some of us are just luckier than others, and our bad moments have fewer casualties. I adjust my grip on the steering wheel, and then I say, "Please. I need to know, Kenna." Another quiet moment passes, but then she grabs her phone and unlocks the screen. She clears her throat. My window is cracked, so I roll it all the way up and make it quieter in the cab of the truck. She looks so nervous. Before she begins to read, I reach over and tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear as a show of solidarity, or something, I don't know. I just want to touch her and let her know I'm not judging her. I just need to know what happened. That's all.
Chapter 33. Kenna. Dear Scotty. Your car was my favorite place to be. I don't know if I ever told you that. It was the only place we could get true solitude. I used to look forward to the days our schedules would align, and you'd pick me up from work. I'd get in your car and it was like feeling all the same welcoming comforts of home. You always had a soda waiting for me, and on the days you knew I hadn't had dinner yet, you'd have a small order of fries from McDonald's sitting in the cup holder because you knew they were my favorite fries. You were sweet. You always did sweet things for me. Tiny little gestures here and there that most people don't think of. You were more than I deserved, even though you'd argue with that. I've gone over the day you died so many times. I once wrote every single second of that day down on paper. Most of it was an estimate, of course. I don't know if I actually spent a minute and a half brushing my teeth that morning. Or if the break I took at work really was 15 minutes to the second. Or if we really spent 57 minutes at the party we went to that night. I'm sure I'm off in my calculations by a few minutes here or there, but for the most part, I can account for everything that happened that day. Even the things I wish I could forget. A guy you went to college with was having a party and you had been his roommate your freshman year, so you said you owed it to him to make an appearance. I was sad to have to be at the party, but in hindsight, I'm glad you got to see most of your friends that night. I know it probably meant something to them after you died. Even though you had made an appearance, it wasn't your scene anymore and I knew you didn't want to be there. You were past the parties and starting to focus on the more important pieces of life. You had just started graduate school and you spent your spare time either studying or with me. I knew we wouldn't be there long, so I found a chair in a corner of the living room and curled up into it while you made your rounds. I don't know if you knew this, but I watched you for the entire 57 minutes we were there. You were so magnetic. People's eyes would light up when they would look at you. Crowds would gather around you, and when you'd spot someone you hadn't yet greeted, you'd have this huge reaction and make them feel like the most important person at that party. I don't know if that's something you practiced, but I have a feeling you didn't even know you had that kind of power. The power to make people feel appreciated and important. Around the 56th minute we were there, you spotted me sitting in the corner smiling at you. You walked over to me, ignoring everyone around you, and I suddenly found myself the focus of your sole attention. You had me locked in your gaze, and I knew I was appreciated. I was important. You sat down next to me in the chair and you kissed my neck and whispered in my ear, "I'm sorry I left you alone." You didn't leave me alone. I was with you the whole time. "Do you want to leave now?" you asked. "Not if you're having fun." "Are you having fun?" you asked. I shrugged. I could think of a lot more things that were more fun than that party. By the smile that spread across your face, I gathered you felt the same. "Want to go to the lake?" I nodded because those were my 3 favorite things. That lake. Your car. You. You stole a 12-pack of beers and we snuck out and you drove us to the lake. We had a favorite spot where we'd go some nights. It was down a rural back road, and you said you knew of it because you used to go camping there with your friends. It wasn't far from where I lived with roommates, so sometimes you'd show up at my apartment in the middle of the night and we'd go there and have sex on the dock, or in the water, or in your car. Sometimes we'd stay and watch the sunrise. That particular night, we had the beer you had taken from the party and some leftover edibles you had bought off a friend the week before. We had the music turned up and we were making out in the water. We didn't have sex that night. Sometimes we only made out, and I liked that about you so much, because one of the things I've always hated about relationships is how makeouts seem to stop when sex becomes a thing. But with you, the makeouts were always just as special as the sex. You kissed me in the water like it was the last time you would ever kiss me. I wonder if you had some sort of fear or premonition, and that's why you kissed me the way you did. Or maybe I only remember it so well because it was our last kiss. We got out of the water and we were lying naked on the dock under the moonlight, the world spinning above our heads. I want meatloaf, you said. I laughed at you because it was such a random thing to say. Meatloaf? You grinned and said,
Yeah.
Doesn't that sound good? Meatloaf and mashed potatoes. You sat up on the dock and handed me my dry shirt. Let's go to the diner. You'd had more to drink than me, so you asked me to drive. It wasn't like us to drink and drive, but I think we felt invincible under that moonlight. We were young and in love, and surely no one dies when they're at their happiest. We were also high, so our decisions were slightly more impaired that night, but whatever the reason, you asked me to drive. And for whatever reason, I didn't tell you I shouldn't. I got in that car, knowing I had tripped on the gravel as I reached for the door. I still got behind the wheel, even though I had to blink really hard to make sure the car was in drive and not in reverse. And I still chose to drive us away from the lake, even though I was too drunk to remember how to turn down the volume. Coldplay was blasting so loud over the radio it was making my ears hurt. We didn't even get very far before it happened. You knew the roads better than I did. They were gravel, and I was going too fast, and I didn't know the turn was so sharp. You said, slow down, but you said it kind of loud, and it startled me, so I slammed on the brakes. But I know now that slamming on brakes on a gravel-top road can make you lose complete control of the car, especially when you're drunk. I was turning the wheel to the right, but the car kept going to the left, like it was slipping on ice. A lot of people are lucky after a wreck because they don't remember the details. They have recollections of things that happened before the wreck and after the wreck, but over time, every single second of that night has come back to me, whether I wanted it to or not. The top was down on your convertible, and all I can remember when I felt the car hit the ditch and begin to tilt was that we needed to protect our faces, because I was worried the glass from the windshield might cut us. That was my biggest fear in that moment. A little bit of glass. I didn't see my life flash before my eyes. I didn't even see your life flash before my eyes. All I worried about in that moment was what would happen to the windshield. Because surely no one dies when they're at their happiest. I felt my whole world tilt, and then I felt gravel against my cheek. The radio was still blasting Coldplay. The engine was still running. My breath had caught in my throat and I couldn't even scream, but I didn't think I needed to. I just kept thinking about your car and how mad you probably were. I remember whispering, "I'm so sorry," like your biggest concern would be that we would have to call a tow truck. Everything happened so fast, but I was calm in that moment. I thought you were, too. I was waiting for you to ask me if I was okay, but we were upside down in a convertible, and everything I'd had to drink that night was flipping over in my stomach, and I felt the weight of gravity like I had never felt it before. I thought I was going to puke and needed to right myself up, so I struggled to find my seatbelt, and when I finally clicked it, I remember falling. It was only a couple of inches, but it was unexpected and I let out a yelp. You still didn't ask me if I was okay. It was dark, and I realized we might be trapped, so I reached over and touched your arm to follow you out. I knew you'd find a way out. I relied on you for everything, and your presence was the only reason I was still calm. I wasn't even worried about your car anymore because I knew you'd be more worried about me than your car. And it's not like I was speeding too much, or driving too recklessly. I was only a little bit drunk and a little bit high, but so very stupid to believe even a little bit wasn't too much. We only flipped over because we hit a deep ditch, and since the top wasn't even up, I thought surely it would be minimal damage. Maybe a week or two in the shop, and then the car I loved so much, the car that felt like home, would be fine. Like you. Like me. Scotty. I shook your arm when I said your name that time. I wanted you to know I was okay. I thought maybe you were in shock, and that's why you were so quiet. When you didn't move, and I realized your arm was just dangling against the road that had somehow become our ceiling, my first thought was that you might have passed out, But when I pulled my hand back to figure out a way to right myself up, it was covered in blood. Blood that was supposed to be running through your veins. I couldn't grasp that. I couldn't fathom that a silly wreck on the side of a county road that landed us in a ditch could actually hurt us. But that was your blood. I immediately scooted closer to you, and because you were upside down and still in your seatbelt, I couldn't pull you to me. I tried, but you wouldn't budge. I turned your face to mine, but you looked like you were sleeping. Your lips were slightly parted and your eyes were closed. And you looked so much like you looked all the times I spent the night with you and woke up to find you asleep next to me. I tried pulling you, but you still wouldn't budge because the car was on top of part of you. Your shoulder and your arm were trapped, and I couldn't pull you out or get to your seatbelt, and even though it was dark, I realized moonlight reflects off of blood the same way it reflects off the ocean. Your blood was everywhere. The entire car being upside down made everything even more confusing. Where were your pockets? Where was your phone? I needed a phone, so I scrambled and felt around with my hands, looking for a phone for what felt like an eternity, but all I could find were rocks and glass. The whole time, I was muttering your name through chattering teeth. Scotty. Scotty, Scotty, Scotty. It was a prayer, but I didn't know how to pray. No one had ever taught me. I just remember the prayer you had given over family dinner at your parents' house, and the prayers I used to hear my foster mother, Mona, pray. But all I'd ever heard people do was bless food, and I just wanted you to wake up, so I said your name over and hoped God would hear me, even though I wasn't sure if I was getting his attention. It certainly felt like no one was paying us attention that night. What I experienced in those moments was indescribable. You think you know how you'll react in a terrifying situation, but that's the thing. You can't think in a terrifying situation. There's probably a reason for how disconnected we become to our own thoughts in moments of sheer horror. But that's exactly how I felt. Disconnected. Parts of me were moving without my brain even knowing what was happening. My hands were searching around for things I wasn't even sure I was looking for. I was growing hysterical, because with each passing second, I became more aware of how different my life would be going forward. How that 1 second had altered whatever course we were on, and things would never be the same, and all the parts of me that had become disconnected in that wreck would never fully reconnect. I crawled out of the car through the space between the ground and my door, and once I was outside and standing right side up, I puked. The headlights were shining on a row of trees, but none of that light was helping us. And then I ran around to the passenger side of the car to free you, but I couldn't. There was your arm, sticking out from under the car. The moonlight glimmering in your blood. I grabbed your hand and squeezed it, but it was cold. I was still muttering your name. Scotty, 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 no, no, no. I went around to the windshield and tried kicking it to break it, but even though it was already cracked, I couldn't break it enough to fit through it, or pull you out. I knelt down and pressed my face to the glass, and I saw what I had done to you then. It was a stark realization that no matter how much you love someone, you can still do despicable things to them. It was like a wave of the most intense pain you could ever imagine rolled right over me. My body rolled with it. It started at my head and I curled in on myself, all the way to my toes. I groaned, and I sobbed, and when I went back around the car to touch your hand again, there was nothing. No pulse in your wrist. No heartbeat in your palm. No warmth in your fingertips. I screamed. I screamed so much, I stopped being able to make sounds. And then I panicked. It's the only way to describe what happened to me. I couldn't find either of our phones, so I started running toward the highway. The further I got, the more confused I grew. I couldn't imagine that what happened was real, or that what was happening was real. I was running down a highway with one shoe. I could see myself, like I was ahead of me, running toward me, like I was in a nightmare, not making any progress. It wasn't the memories of the wreck that took time to come back to me. It was that moment. The part of the night that was drowned out by the adrenaline rush and hysteria that bowled through me. I started making noises I didn't know I could make. I couldn't breathe because you were dead, and how was I supposed to breathe when you had no air? It was the worst realization I ever had, and I fell to my knees and screamed into the darkness. I don't know how long I was on the side of the road. Cars were passing me, and I still had your blood on my hands, and I was scared and angry and couldn't stop seeing your mother's face. I had killed you and everyone was going to miss you, and you wouldn't be around to make anyone feel appreciated or important anymore, and it was my fault, and I just wanted to die. I didn't care about anything else. I just wanted to die. I walked out into the street at what I'm guessing was around 11 at night, and a car had to swerve to miss me. I tried 3 times, with 3 different cars, but none of them hit me, and all of them were angry that I was in the road at dark. I got honked at and cussed at, but no one put me out of my misery, and no one helped me. I had already walked over a mile, and I didn't know how far away I was from my apartment, but I knew if I could just get there, I could step off my 4th-floor apartment balcony, because that was the only thing I could think to do in that moment. I wanted to be with you, but in my mind, you were no longer trapped under your car in that wreck. You were somewhere else, floating around in the dark, and I was determined to join you because what was the point? You were my whole point. I began to shrink with every second that passed, until I felt invisible. And that's the last thing I remember. There's a long stretch of nothing between me leaving you and me even realizing I left you. Hours. Your family was told I walked home and fell asleep, but that's not exactly what happened. I'm almost positive I fainted from shock, because when the cops beat on my bedroom door the next morning and I opened my eyes, I was on the floor. I noticed a small puddle of blood on the floor next to my head. I must have hit my head going down, but I didn't have time to inspect it because police were in my bedroom and one of them had his hand on my arm, and he was lifting me to my feet. That's the last time I ever saw my bedroom. I remember my roommate Clarissa looked horrified. It wasn't because she was horrified for me. She was horrified for herself. It was as if she had been living with a murderer all this time and had no idea. Her boyfriend, we could never remember his name, Jason or Jackson or Justin, was comforting her like I had ruined her day. I almost apologized to her, but I couldn't get my thoughts to connect with my voice. I had questions, I was confused, I was weak, I was hurting. But the most powerful of all the feelings flooding me in that moment was my loneliness. Little did I know, that feeling would become perpetual. Permanent. I knew when they put me in the back seat of the police car that my life had reached its peak with you, and nothing that came after you would ever matter. There was before you and there was during you. For some reason, I never thought there would be an after you. But there was, and I was in it. I'll be in it forever. There's still more to read, but my throat is dry and my nerves are shot and I'm scared of what Ledger is thinking of me right now. He's gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles have turned white. I reach for my bottle of water and take a long drink. Ledger directs his car all the way up his driveway, and when we reach his house, he puts his truck in park and leans his elbow against his door. He doesn't look at me. Keep reading. My hands are shaking now. I don't know if I can continue to read without crying, but I don't think he'd care even if I read through my tears. I take another drink and then start reading the next chapter. Dear Scotty. This is what it was like in the interrogation room. Them, how much did you have to drink? Me, silence. Them, who took you home after the wreck? Me, silence. Them, are you on any other illegal substances? Me, silence. Them, did you call for help? Me, silence. Them, did you know he was still alive when you fled the scene? Me, silence. Them, did you know he was still alive when we found him an hour and a half ago? Me, screams. Lots of screams. Screams until they put me back in a cell and said they'd come back for me when I calmed down. When I calmed down. I didn't calm down, Scotty. I think I lost a little bit of my mind that day. They pulled me into the interrogation room 2 more times over the next 24 hours. I hadn't slept, I was heartbroken, I couldn't eat or drink anything. I just wanted to die. And then, when they told me you would still be alive if I had just called for help, I did die. It was a Monday, I think. 2 days after our wreck. I sometimes want to buy myself a headstone and have that date written on it, even though I'm still pretending not to be dead. My epitaph would read, Kenna Nicole Rowan, died 2 days after the passing of her beloved Scotty. I never even attempted to call my mother through all of it. I was too depressed to call anyone at all. And how could I call my friends back home and tell them what I'd done? I was ashamed and sad, and as a result of that, no one in my life before I met you knew what I had done. And since you were gone, and your entire family hated me, I had no visitors. They appointed me a lawyer, but I had no one to post bail. I didn't even have anywhere to go if I could have posted bail. I found comfort being there in that jail cell, so I didn't mind it. If I couldn't be with you in your car, the only place I wanted to be was alone in that cell where I could refuse to eat the food they gave me and hopefully, eventually, my heart would stop beating like I thought yours had that night. Turns out, your heart was still beating. It was just your arm that had died. I could go into more gruesome details about how it was so horribly crushed and mangled during the wreck that the blood flow was completely cut off, and that's why I touched you and thought you were dead, and how, despite all that, you still somehow woke up and got out of the car and tried to get the help I never brought back to you. I would have realized that if only I would have stayed with you longer, or tried harder. If I wouldn't have panicked and ran and allowed the adrenaline to pump through me to the point that I wasn't even functioning within the borders of reality. If I could have been as calm as you always were, you'd still be alive. We'd probably be raising the daughter together that you never even knew we made. We'd probably have 2 kids by now, or even 3, and I'd more than likely be a teacher, or a nurse, or a writer, or whatever you would have undoubtedly given me the strength to realize I could be. My God, I miss you. I miss you so much, even if it never showed in my eyes in a way anyone would have been satisfied with. I sometimes wonder if my mental state played a hand in my sentencing. I was empty inside, and I'm sure that emptiness showed in my eyes any time I had to face someone. I didn't even care about the first court hearing 2 weeks after you died. The lawyer told me we would fight it, that all I had to do was plead not guilty and he would prove that I wasn't of sound mind that night and that my actions weren't intentional, and that I was very, 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 very remorseful. But I didn't care what the lawyer suggested. I wanted to go to prison. I didn't want to go back out in the world where I would have to look at cars again, or gravel roads, or hear Coldplay on the radio, or think about all the things I'd have to do without you. Looking back on it now, I realize I was in a deep and dangerous state of depression, but I don't think anyone noticed. Or maybe there was just no one who cared. Everyone was #Team Scotty, like we were never even on the same team. Everyone wanted justice, and sadly, justice and empathy couldn't both fit inside that courtroom. But what's funny is I was on their side. I wanted justice for them. I empathized with them. With your mother, with your father, with all the people in your life who were packed inside that courtroom. I pleaded guilty, to my lawyer's dismay. I had to. When they started talking about what you went through after I ran away from you that night, I knew I would rather die than sit through a trial and listen to the details. It was all too gruesome, like I was living some horror story, and not my own life. I'm sorry, Scotty. I tuned it all out somehow by just repeating that phrase over and over in my head. I'm sorry, Scotty. I'm sorry, Scotty. I'm sorry, Scotty. They scheduled another court date for sentencing, and it was sometime between those 2 court dates that I realized I hadn't had my period in a while. I thought my cycle was messed up, so I didn't mention it to anyone. Had I known I was growing a part of you inside me sooner, I'm positive I would have found the will to go to trial and fight for myself. Fight for our daughter. When the sentencing date came, I tried not to listen as your mother read her victim impact statement, but every word she spoke is still engraved in my bones. I kept thinking about what you told me as you were carrying me up the stairs on your back that night in her house, about how they wanted more kids, but you were their miracle baby. That's all I could think of in that moment. I had killed their miracle baby, and now they had no one, and it was all my fault. I had planned to give an allocution statement, but I was too weak and too broken, so when it came time for me to stand up and speak, I couldn't. Physically, emotionally, mentally. I was stuck in that chair, but I tried to stand. My lawyer grabbed my arm to make sure I didn't collapse, and then I think he might have read something out loud for me, I don't know. I'm still not clear on what happened in the courtroom that day, because that day was so much like that night. A nightmare that I was somehow watching play out from a distance. I had tunnel vision. I knew there were people around me, and I knew the judge was speaking, but my brain was so exhausted, I couldn't process what anyone was saying. Even when the judge read my sentence, I had no reaction, because I couldn't absorb it. It wasn't until later, after I was given an 4 for dehydration, that I found out I had been sentenced to 7 years in prison, with the eligibility for parole even sooner than that. 7 years, I remember thinking. That's bullshit. That isn't nearly long enough. I try not to think about what it must have been like for you in that car after I left you there. What must you have thought of me? Did you think I had been thrown from the car? Were you looking for me? Or did you know I had left you there all alone? It's the time you spend alone that night that I know haunts us all, because we'll never know what you went through. What you were thinking. Who you were calling out to. What your final minutes were like. I can't imagine a more painful way for your mother and father to be forced to live out the rest of their lives. Sometimes I wonder if that's why DM is here. Maybe DM was your way of making sure your parents would be okay. But in that same vein, not having DM in my life would mean it's your way of punishing me. It's okay. I deserve it. I plan to fight it, but I know I deserve it. Every morning, I wake up and I silently apologize. To you, to your parents, to DM. Throughout the day, I silently thank your parents for raising our daughter since we can't. And every night, I apologize again before I fall asleep. I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry. That's my day, every day, on repeat. I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry. My sentence was not justice considering the way you died. Eternity wouldn't be justice. But I hope your family knows my actions that night didn't come from a place of selfishness. It was horror and shock and agony and confusion and terror that guided me away from you that night. It was never selfishness. I am not a bad person, and I know you know that, wherever you are. And I know you forgive me. It's just who you are. I only hope one day our daughter will forgive me too. And your parents. Then maybe, by some miracle, I can start to forgive myself. Until then, I love you. I miss you. I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry. Repeat. Chapter 34. Kenna. I close out the document. I can't read anymore. My eyes have filled with tears. I'm surprised I made it as far as I did before crying, but I tried not to absorb the words as I was reading them aloud. I set my phone aside and I wipe my eyes. Ledger hasn't moved. He's in the same position, leaning against his driver's side door, staring straight ahead. My voice is no longer filling his truck. Now there's just a silence that's thick and uninviting, to the point that Ledger can't seem to take it anymore. He swings open his door and gets out of his truck. He walks to the back of it and begins unloading the table without so much as a word. I watch him in the rear-view mirror. Once the table is on the ground, he grabs one of the chairs. There's a pause before he chucks the chair onto the table. It lands with a loud clank that I feel in my chest. Then Ledger grabs a second chair and angrily tosses it across the yard. He's so mad. I can't watch. I lean forward and press my hands against my face, regretting ever reading a single word of that to him. I have no idea if he's mad at the situation, or me, or if he's just back there throwing chairs as a way to process 5 years' worth of emotions. Fuck, he yells, right before I hear the crash of the final chair. His voice reverberates in the dense trees that surround his property. The whole truck shakes with the slam of his tailgate. Then there's just silence. Stillness. The only thing I can hear is my shallow and rapid breathing. I'm scared to get out of the truck because I don't want to have to come face to face with him if any of that outburst was directed at me. I wish I knew. I swallow a lump that forms in my throat when I hear his footsteps crunching against the gravel. He stops at my door and he opens it. I'm still leaning forward with my face in my hands, but I eventually pull them away and hesitantly look up at him. He's gripping the top of the truck, leaning in my doorway. His head is resting against the inside of his raised arm. His eyes are red, but his expression isn't filled with hatred. It isn't even filled with anger. If anything, he looks apologetic, as if he knows his outburst scared me and he feels bad. I'm not mad at you. He presses his lips together and looks down. He shakes his head gently. It's just a lot to process. I nod, but I can't speak because my heart is pounding and my throat feels swollen, and I'm still not sure what to say. He's still looking down when he lets go of the roof of the truck. His eyes meet mine as he reaches into the truck and puts his right hand on my left thigh and his left hand under my right knee. He pulls me to the edge of the passenger seat so that I'm facing him. Ledger then takes my face in his hands and tilts it so that I'm looking up at him. He blows out a slow breath, like what he's about to say is hard to get out. I'm sorry you lost him. I can't hold back the tears after that. It's the first time anyone has ever acknowledged that I lost Scotty that night too. Ledger's words mean more to me than I think he can comprehend. Agony spreads across his face as he continues. What if Scotty can see how we've been treating you? A tear forms and spills down his cheek. Just one lonely tear, and it makes me so sad. I'm part of everything that's been tearing you down all these years, and I'm sorry, Kenna. I'm so sorry. I place my hand over his chest, right over his heart. It's okay. What I wrote doesn't change anything. It was still my fault. It's not okay. None of this is okay. He's cradling me in his arms with his cheek pressed against the top of my head. He runs his right hand in soothing circles over my back. He holds me like that for a long time. I don't want him to let go. He's the first person I've been able to share the full details of that night with, and I wasn't sure if it would make things better or worse. But this feels better, so maybe that means something. I feel like a weight has been lifted. It's not the weight of the anchor that keeps me tethered under the surface, that won't be lifted until I get to hold my daughter. But a small portion of my pain has attached to his sympathy, and it feels like he's physically lifting me up for air, allowing me a few minutes to breathe. He eventually pulls back far enough to assess me. He must see something on my face that makes him want to comfort me because he presses a soft kiss to my forehead, while brushing my hair back tenderly. He kisses the tip of my nose and then plants a soft peck on my lips. I don't think he expected me to kiss him back, but I feel more for him in this moment than I ever have. I clutch his shirt in my fists and quietly beg his mouth for a much fuller kiss. He gives it to me. His kisses feel like both forgiveness and promises. I imagine mine feel like apologies to him, because he keeps coming back for more every time we separate. I end up on my back, and he's halfway into his truck, hovering over me, our mouths pressed together. When we're in the thick of fogging up all the windows, he pulls away from my neck, and there's a split-second look he gives me. It's so quick, it's a flicker, a flash. But I can tell he wants more in that quick glance, and so do I, so I nod and he pulls away and opens his glove box. He grabs a condom and starts to open it with his teeth, bracing himself up with one arm. I take this opportunity to slide my panties off and bunch my long skirt up around my waist. He gets the package open, but then he pauses. The seconds begin to drag as he silently stares down at me with contemplation. Then he tosses the condom aside and lowers himself on top of me again. He presses a soft kiss against my lips. His breath is hot against my cheek when he says, "You deserve a bed." I drag a hand through his hair. "You don't have a bed here?" He shakes his head. "Nope. Not even an inflatable mattress?" Our first 2 times were on an inflatable mattress. "You deserve a real bed." "And no, I don't have either one here." "How about a hammock?" He smiles at that, but still shakes his head. "A yoga mat?" I'm not picky. He laughs and kisses my chin. "Stop it, or we'll end up fucking in this truck." I wrap my legs around his waist. "And that's bad how?" He groans into my neck, and then I lift my hips and he gives in. He grabs the condom and finishes opening it. While he's doing that, I'm unzipping his jeans. He slides on the condom and then pulls me to the edge of the seat. His truck is the perfect height for this. Neither of us even has to adjust ourselves or change positions. He just grips my hips and pushes into me, and even though it isn't a real bed, it's still just as good as it was last night.
Chapter 35. Ledger. I don't know how I found the strength to pull away from her long enough to go inside and get the floor started. I figured she'd sit back and watch me, or write in her notebook, but as soon as I told her I needed to get some work finished, she asked how she could help. It's been 3 hours. We've mostly worked, with the occasional short break to rehydrate and kiss some more, but we've finished most of what will be the living room floor. We'd be done by now if she weren't wearing that shirt with that skirt. She's been crawling across the floor, helping me lock the flooring into place, and every time I look at her I can see straight down her shirt. I'm so distracted I'm surprised I haven't injured myself. We haven't discussed a single thing of importance since we exited the truck. It's as if we left all the important stuff inside it and chose to carry nothing of weight with us into this house. It's been such a heavy day already. I'm doing everything I can to keep things light. We both are. I haven't brought up the letter since we came inside. She hasn't mentioned the restraining order, I haven't mentioned Mother's Day under this roof, we haven't talked about what our new physical connection means or how we're possibly going to navigate it. I think we both know the conversations will come, but right now it feels like we're on the same page, and all we want out of today's page is to ride the high of each other. I think Kenna and I needed today. Kenna especially needed today. She always looks like she's carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, but today she looks like she's floating. She makes gravity seem powerless against her. She's smiled and laughed more in the last few hours than she has since the day I met her. It makes me wonder if I've been a huge chunk of the weight she's been carrying. Kenna locks the piece of wood in place on her end and then reaches for a bottle of water. She catches me staring at her chest, and she laughs. You sure do have a hard time looking me in the eye now. I think I have an obsession with your shirt. She usually wears t-shirts, but this particular shirt is made out of a slinky material that dips down in the front, and now that she's been working for 3 hours, it's starting to stick to her in all the places where she's sweating. That shirt is fucking lovely. She laughs, and I want to kiss her again. I crawl over to her, and when I reach her, I press my mouth to hers so hard she falls backward against the floor. I kiss her through her laughter, until I'm on top of her. I hate that I have no furniture. We just keep ending up on the hardwood floor we've been installing, and it's nice, but I'd give anything to kiss her on something more comfortable. Something as soft as her mouth. You'll never finish these floors, she whispers. Fuck the floors. We kiss for a few minutes, and we just keep getting better at it. There's a lot of pulling and tugging and tasting, and it gets a little chaotic, and her shirt that I love so fucking much ends up somewhere on the floor next to us. I'm admiring her bra now, kissing her skin right above it, when she whispers, I'm scared. Her hands are in my hair, and she keeps them there when I lift up just enough to look down at her. What if they find out about us before you have a chance to tell them? We're being reckless. I don't want her to think about this today because today is good, and they're out of town, so there's no point in dwelling on it until they return. I press a comforting kiss against her forehead. Worrying won't make the situation any better, I say. They're out of town. Whatever happens is going to happen whether we make out right now or not. She smiles when I say that. Good point. She wraps her hand around my neck and pulls me back to her mouth. I lower myself on top of her, but then whisper, "What's the worst that could happen if I have to hide you forever? You've seen my closet, Kenna. It's huge. You'll love it in there." She laughs against my mouth. "I could install a mini fridge and a television for you. When they come to visit, you can just go to your closet and pretend you're on vacation." "You're terrible for joking about this," she says, but she's laughing. I kiss her until we aren't laughing anymore, and then I slide off her until I'm lying next to her, leaning over her. It's the first time we've really looked at each other without feeling like we have to look away. She's so goddamn flawless. I don't say that out loud, though, because I don't want to diminish any of the other wonderful things about her by giving her a superficial compliment about her face. It would take away from how smart I think she is, and how compassionate, resilient, and spirited she is. I look away from her impeccable face and slowly trace the center of her cleavage until she has chills running across her skin. I have to finish my floors. I slide my hand over to her breast and gently squeeze. "Stop distracting me with these things. Put your shirt back on." She laughs at the same time someone clears their throat from across the room. I quickly sit up, immediately scrambling to block the view of Kenna from whoever the fuck is in my house. I look up to find my parents standing in the doorway, looking at the ceiling. Kenna immediately scrambles away from me and reaches for her shirt. "Oh, my God," she whispers. "Who are they?" "My parents," I mutter. I swear, embarrassing me is their favorite hobby. I raise my voice so they can hear me. "Nice of you to warn me you were showing up today." I help Kenna to her feet, and my parents are still looking at everything but us as I help her back into her shirt. "My father says, I cleared my throat when we walked in. How much warning do you need?" I'm not as mortified as I probably should be right now. Maybe I'm growing immune to their shenanigans. But Kenna isn't immune. Now that she's dressed and halfway standing behind me, my father motions at the work we've been doing. "Seems you've made a lot of progress on the floors." "In more ways than one," my mother says, amused. Kenna buries her face against my arm. "Who's your friend, Ledger?" My mother is smiling, but she has a lot of different smiles, and they don't always mean something sweet. This smile is her entertained smile. Her "this is so much fun" smile. This is, I have no idea how to introduce Kenna to them. I don't even know what name to use. They'd definitely recognize her name if I said Kenna, but I'm not exactly sure they won't recognize her face, so lying to them would be pointless. This is my new employee. I need to ask Kenna how she wants me to confront this. I wrap my arm around her shoulder and lead her to the bedroom. "Excuse us while we go coordinate our lies," I say over my shoulder. Kenna and I make it to the bedroom, out of their view, and she looks at me wide-eyed. "You can't tell them who I am," she whispers. "I can't lie to them. My mom will probably recognize you once she gets a better look at you. She was at your sentencing, and she never forgets a face. She also knows you're back in town." Kenna looks like she's about to fold in on herself. She starts to pace, and I can see the weight of the world begin to return to her shoulders. She looks up at me with fear in her eyes. Do they hate me? That question digs at my heart, mainly because she's starting to tear up. And it's only in this moment that I realize she assumes everyone who knew Scotty must hate her. No. Of course they don't hate you. I realize as I say those words that I don't necessarily know if they're true. My parents were heartbroken when Scotty died. He was as important to them as I am to Patrick and Grace. But I'm not sure that I've ever had a conversation with my parents specifically about their opinion of Kenna. It was over 5 years ago. I can't remember what conversations were had or what their thoughts were on everything that happened. And we barely discuss it anymore. Kenna can see that I'm processing, and she grows a little panicked. Can't you just take me home? I can sneak out the back and meet you at your truck. Whether my parents realize who Kenna is or not, Kenna doesn't know what kind of people my parents are. She doesn't realize she has nothing to be concerned about. I cup her face with my hands. Kenna. They're my parents. If they recognize you, they'll have my back no matter what. Those words calm her a little bit. I'll introduce you as Nicole for now, and then I'll take you home and deal with them and the truth later. Okay? They're good people. So are you. She nods, so I give her a quick kiss and grab her hand and lead her out of the bedroom. They're in the kitchen now, inspecting all the things Roman and I have added since they were last out here. When they notice our return, they both casually lean against the counters, anticipating this introduction. I wave a hand at Kenna. This is Nicole. I wave a hand at my parents. My mother, Robin. My father, Benji. Kenna smiles and shakes their hands, but then she sidles back up to my side like she's scared to move too far away from me. I grab her hand that's at her side, and I move it behind her back and squeeze it to provide her with a little comfort. It's such a pleasant surprise that you aren't alone, my mother says. We thought you'd be out here moping by yourself today. I'm scared to ask. Why would I be moping? My mother laughs and turns to my father. You owe me $10, Benji. She holds out her hand, and my father pulls out his wallet and slaps a $10 bill in her palm. She shoves it in the pocket of her jeans. We bet on whether you'd even remember you were supposed to be leaving for your honeymoon today. Why am I not surprised? Which one of you bet that I'd forget Mother's Day? My mother raises her hand. I didn't forget. Check your email. I sent a gift card because I had no idea where to send flowers to this week. My mother takes the $10 bill out of her pocket and hands it back to my father. She walks over to me and finally gives me a hug. Thank you. She doesn't look at Kenna because her attention is stolen mid-hug by the patio door. Oh, wow. It looks even better than I imagined. She releases me and passes us to go play with the accordion-style door. My father is still focused on me and Kenna. I can tell he's going to attempt to be polite and include her in conversation, but I know how much she wants to be ignored right now. Nicole has to get to work, I blurt out. I need to give her a ride, and then I can meet you both at the house. My mother makes a humph sound behind me. We just got here, she says. I wanted a tour of everything you've done. My father's attention is still on Kenna. What do you do, Nicole? Besides, he waves a hand toward me. Besides Ledger. Kenna gasps quietly and says, wow. Okay. Well, I don't do Ledger. I squeeze her hand again, because that is not what my father meant. But if we're being technical, I think he means what do you do other than work for me? She's looking at me blankly. Because I said you're my employee earlier, but then I just lied and said you have to go to work, and they know my bar is closed on Sundays, so he assumes you have a different job besides the bar, and he said what do you do besides? I'm rambling now, and it's just making the moment worse because my parents can hear this conversation, and I know they are enjoying the shit out of it. My mother has returned to my father's side, and she's grinning with delight. Please take me home, Kenna pleads. I nod. Yeah. This is torture. It's such a treat for me, though, my mother says. I think this might be my favorite Mother's Day yet. And here we were thinking he was going to be sad because he didn't get married, my father says. What do you think he has in store for Father's Day? I can only imagine, my mother says. You two are mortifying. I'm almost 30. When will this stop? You're 28, my mother says. That's not almost 30. 29 is almost 30. Let's go, I say to Kenna. No, bring her to dinner, my mother begs. She's not hungry. I lead Kenna out the door. I'll meet you both at the house. We're almost in my truck when I realize what leaving my parents alone means. I pause and say, I'll be right back. I point to the truck so Kenna knows she can go ahead without me. I turn around and walk back to the house, and then I lean in at the doorway. Do not have sex in my house. Oh, come on, my father says. We would never. I'm serious. This is my new house, and I'll be damned if you two christen it. We won't, my mother says, shooing me away. We're getting too old for that anyway, my father says. So old. Our son is almost 30. I step out of the doorway and motion for them to leave. Get out. Go. I don't trust either of you. I wait for them to join me outside, and then I lock the front door. I point toward their car. I'll meet you at the house. I walk to my truck and ignore their chatter. I wait for my parents to back out, and then Kenna and I both sigh simultaneously. They can be a lot sometimes, I admit. Wow. That was typical of them. I glance over at her, and she's smiling. It was embarrassing, but I kind of liked them, she says. But I'm still not having dinner with them. I don't blame her. I put my truck in reverse and then point to the middle of the seat. Now that we've shattered whatever line we had drawn in the sand, I want her to be as close to me as she can get. She slides across the seat until she's right next to me, and I put my hand on her knee as I drive away from the house. You do that a lot, she says. I do what? You point all the time. It's rude. She sounds amused rather than offended. I don't point all the time. You do too. I noticed it the first night I came into your bar. It's why I let you kiss me, because I thought it was hot. The way you kept pointing at things. I grin. You just said it was rude. You think rude is hot? No. I think kindness is hot. Maybe rude was the wrong term. She leans her head against my shoulder. I find your pointing sexy. Do you? I let go of her knee and point at a mailbox. See that mailbox? Then I point at a tree. Look at that tree. I tap on my brakes as we close in on a stop sign, and I point at the sign. Look at that, Kenna. What's that? Is that a fucking pigeon? She tilts her head and looks at me curiously. When I come to a full stop at the sign, she says, Scotty used to say that sometimes. What does it mean? I shake my head. It was just something he used to say. Patrick is the only one who knows where that phrase originated, and even though there's no huge secret or story behind it, I still want to hold on to it. Kenna doesn't press me. She just lifts up and kisses me before I pull out onto the street. She's smiling, and it feels so good to see her smile like this. I look back at the road and put my hand on her knee again. She rests her head against my shoulder, and after a quiet moment, she says, I wish I could have seen you with Scotty. I bet you two were fun together. I love that she admitted that out loud. It feels good to hear, because at some point, we're all going to have to move past the fact that Scotty died the way he did. I think I'm at a point where I want his memory to be accompanied by only good feelings. I want to be able to talk about him with people, especially with his father, but in a way that doesn't make Patrick cry. We all knew Scotty, but we all knew him in different ways. We all carry different memories of him. I think it would be good for Patrick and Grace to get to hear the memories Kenna has of Scotty that none of the rest of us have. I wish I could have seen you with Scotty, I admit. Kenna kisses my shoulder and then rests her head there again. It's quiet until I lift my hand and point at a guy on a bicycle. Look at that bike. I point at an upcoming gas station. Look at those gas pumps. I point at a cloud. Look at that cloud. Kenna releases laughter mixed with a groan. Stop. You're ruining the sexiness of it. I reluctantly dropped Kenna off at her apartment 2 hours ago. It might have taken 15 minutes for me to stop kissing her long enough to walk back to my truck, but I didn't want to leave. I wanted to spend the rest of the evening, and possibly even the night with her, but my parents are assholes who don't believe in schedules, and they're always showing up at the worst times. At least this time it was in the middle of the day. They once showed up at 3 a.m., and I woke up to my father blasting Nirvana in the backyard and cooking steaks on the grill. My father made burgers tonight, and we just finished eating dinner about an hour ago. I waited throughout the whole dinner for them to ask me about Kenna. Or Nicole, rather. But neither of them brought it up. All we've talked about tonight has been their latest adventures on the road and my latest adventures with DM. They were disappointed to find out DM and the Landrys are out of town. I suggested they call ahead the next time they feel like dropping in. It would make it easier on all of us. My parents have always gotten along with Scotty's parents, but the Landrys had Scotty later in life, so they're a little older than my parents. I would say they're more mature than my parents, but immature isn't the right term to describe my parents. They're just a little more carefree and unstructured. But even though I wouldn't categorize the four of them as actively close, they share a bond because of Scotty and me. And because DM is like a daughter to me, she's been like a granddaughter to my parents. Which means DM is important to them, and they want the best for her. Which is probably why, as soon as my father goes to the backyard to clean up the grill, my mother slides onto the bar stool and gives me one of her many smiles. This is her "you have a secret, and you better spill it" smile. I ignore her smile, and continue to wash the rest of the dishes. But my mother says, "Get over here and talk to me before your father comes back inside." I dry my hands and sit across the bar from her. She's looking at me like she already knows my secrets. It doesn't surprise me. When I say my mother never forgets a face, I don't say that lightly. It's like a superpower. "Do the Landrys know?" she asks. I play dumb. "Know what?" Her head lilts to the side. "I know who she is, Ledger. I recognized her the day she walked into your bar." "Wait. What? The day you were drunk?" She nods. Now that I think about it, I remember her staring at Kenna when she walked into my bar that day. Why would she not say anything to me about that? She didn't even bring it up when I spoke to her on the phone a few days later and told her Kenna was back in town. "You told me she was leaving town last time we talked," she says. She is. I feel guilty when I say that because I'm hoping with everything in me that it isn't true. Or she was. I don't know anymore. Do Patrick and Grace know the two of you are? No. My mother blows out a soft breath. "What are you doing?" "I don't know," I say honestly. "This isn't going to end well." "I know. Do you love her?" I blow out a heavy, slow rush of air. I definitely don't hate her anymore. She takes a sip of her wine and gives this conversation a moment to settle. "Well, I hope you do the right thing." I lift an eyebrow. "What's the right thing?" My mother shrugs. "I don't know. I just hope you do it." I release a short laugh. "Thanks for the non-advice. That's what I'm here for. To tiptoe around this thing they call parenting." She smiles and reaches across the bar to squeeze my hand. "I know you'd rather be with her right now. We don't mind if you abandon us tonight." There's a moment of hesitation on my part, not because I don't want to go to Kenna's place, but because I'm surprised my mother knows who she is, yet she's still okay with it. "Do you blame Kenna?" I ask her after a short pause. My mother looks at me honestly. Scotty wasn't my child, so I felt sorry for everyone involved. Even Kenna. But if what happened to Scotty had happened to you, I can't say that I would make a different choice than Patrick and Grace. I think there's room in a tragedy this size for everyone to be both right and wrong. However, she says, I'm your mother. And if you see something special in her, then I know there must be something special in her. I let her words ruminate, but then I grab my keys and my cell phone and I kiss her on the cheek. Will you be here tomorrow? Yeah, we're staying 2 or 3 days. I'll tell your dad you said goodnight.